Heroes are so common in stories that sometimes the term is used interchangeably with protagonist. The most famous storytelling structure in the West is the hero's journey. But what really is heroism, and given its saturation in stories, is anyone actually exploring it in a fresh new way? What if there was a story that showcased the value in small moments as much as the big ones? A show capable of subverting and embracing trope. One that's built around such sincerity that the heroic moments hit so hard. Welcome to a running series called Exploring Frieren. My name is Pei, and today we're talking about how not all heroes can pull swords from stone. Heroism is often reduced to its biggest moments. This isn't inherently a bad thing. Triumphant scenes, brave actions, and characters overcoming life-threatening stakes all have their place in stories, rightfully so. However, not all heroes wear capes or save the day, because being a hero is ultimately about helping others, and in some cases, prophecy. I'm far from an expert on classic literature and its influence, but I do know that The Chosen One and prophecies are almost as old as written storytelling itself. But I think one of the main reasons the prophetic hero has held true across thousands of years of storytelling is because it's simple for audiences. It's a fun and engaging way of foreshadowing the story you're gonna tell. Because classically, stories built around heroes result in them always winning. The interesting part was how. Now, subverting the standard of the hero protagonist that's destined to win has become more common. The rise of anti-heroes, villain protagonists, and meta storytelling are all a response to subvert this standard of the hero. But not all subversion has to be denial. Something that makes Frieren Beyond Journey's End such an interesting story is the way it engages in trope. Subverting by denying a trope is different than embracing it and finding new depth, questions, and answers that lead the story in a different direction than what we've seen time and time again. Like making a completely new dish with almost the exact same ingredients. And one of my favorite examples of this in Frieren is the way they explore being a hero. They twist vanity on its head and showcase the value of the little unshiny moments that come with heroism as much as the big ones. Being a hero isn't just about saving the city from a dragon, it's also clearing an obstructed path that people use every day. Last week, I made an entire video talking about Frieren's depth as a broad concept, which is why this week I wanted to choose a specific example that showcases that depth. Today's video is brought to you by me. Turns out anime video essays are not as profitable as you'd imagine. Someday soon I'll replace this with actual sponsorships that will create a significantly more reliable source of income. But in the meantime, consider going to my Patreon. If you like my videos, have disposable income, and want to support me, go check it out. There's a link in the description below. There's a lot of heroes in Frieren. The two people I would argue are primary protagonists, Fern and Frieren, are absolutely heroes. And while I'll talk about both of them today, I want to focus more on Stark and Himmel. Frieren is a story built around the question of what comes after the hero's journey, and while the new party explores the world on their own adventure, there's a side-by-side comparison to the previous heroes that saved the world. This story is a lot about Frieren recontextualizing and learning more from her old experiences through her new ones. All of these people influenced Frieren, but as the story goes on, we learn that the forefront of that influence was Himmel. While Frieren is categorized as a mage, Eisen as a warrior, and Hyder as a priest, Himmel simply categorized as a hero. Like I've said time and time again, this story really embraces trope at first. Right on the nose there. And while this character is fascinating, it's almost better juxtaposed to a New Age hero, one who's influenced by his master, the warrior Eisen, and the stories of heroes before him like Himmel. There's a lot to learn from the way this character is written. A constant lesson in acting and writing is the idea of character motivation. Why is a character acting the way they are? What do they want? Who are they, and who do they want to be? Understanding a character's motivation can provide incredible clarity. And I think the forefront motivation for both Stark and Himmel is the need to protect others. These characters consistently offer so much care and compassion to the people around them. It's actually kind of a unifying trait I've seen across many different anime when it comes to creating compelling heroes. That need to protect others is often paired with a hard-headed resistance to norms and pressures. The ability to stand in the face of extreme adversity and overcome it. Actually, in a really interesting way, I think Fern also deeply falls into this category, someone that will not compromise on the standards that they believe in. She's also a very interesting exploration of heroism, but that's for another day. There's actually a lot of really interesting interconnected traits between different cast members while all maintaining distinct personality. Fern and Frieren maintain unique characteristics while also having very similar motivation. Obviously, I also feel that way about Stark and Himmel. All of these traits and actions are incredibly endearing because that's a huge part of storytelling, is being invested in the story that's being told. The most common way that writers do this is by making it easy to root for the characters. Consuming a story requires a certain level of investment, time, attention, energy, money. Writers are constantly fighting to keep their audiences engaged. And the pairing of a likable, endearing cast with a unique set of personalities creates for a very interesting network of character relationships and story development. A cool example of this that also ties back into what I was talking about earlier and the idea that heroism is about small moments as well as large is this scene where a merchant is on a road that's blocked, and when Stark asks why they're clearing the road instead of using magic to traverse it, we find out that Frieren correctly argues that doesn't do anything to help all the people who will use this road after them. Stark has an inclination towards the grandiose, but in reality, one of the most practical lessons in this story to the real world is that small things add up. It's actually a big reoccurring theme when they explore and discuss what it means to be a hero. Something that's really interesting about Himmel's characters throughout the story, they explore the idea of sustainable impact. Whether or not it's in finding joy in being an adventurer or understanding that little things that help people's lives are worth it. We see this paralleled with Stark too. There's one scene where Frieren is looking around a city trying to find Stark. She keeps running into people who Stark had helped throughout the day, whether or not it was unloading a cart, playing with some kids, or stopping a rampaging bull. Not only does he fight for people in the big moments when there's serious danger, but he also loves interacting with them. He creates relationships in every city he visits, just like Himmel. But this is where difference in personality comes in. Himmel's character is incredibly image-oriented to the point of vanity, getting statues of himself and his allies constructed in the cities they helped, paying close attention to the way he's perceived by others, and constantly presenting himself in his best light. His self-centered nature is often played for laughs, but as the story goes on, they do something that I haven't really seen done a lot. They showcase the positive aspects of Himmel's vanity. In a minute, I'll go into more detail exploring that specific idea, but before that, I'd like to finish my point. Frieren explores the trope of heroism by first embracing it, and then second, offering a plethora of depth. It has a wide, remarkable ensemble cast with both protagonists and side characters that represent different aspects of what it means to be a hero. They have this interconnected network of characters that have similar motivations but then offer unique personality. Brandon Sanderson argues to go deeper, not wider. It's the third rule of his magic systems, but Frieren goes deeper by going wider, which actually I think runs in conjunction with what Brandon Sanderson was trying to argue. Approach one idea from a multitude of different directions. Himmel and Stark are both champions of the people. In every town they're in, they find ways to bring joy, helping people unload carts or finding time to play with the children. And while they were similar, Himmel was incredibly image-oriented and Stark is incredibly unaware, which leads us back to the point I wanted to talk about before, the way they handle Himmel's vanity. I've always seen someone pushing to make a statue of themselves as a very vain act. It's actually so common it's become a cliche. How often are villains thwarted while they're in the middle of building a statue of themselves? But in Frieren, not only do they re-explore this idea of statues and vanity, it actually runs in conjunction with the central theme. Growing up, there was this perception, especially by my oldest brother, that I was attention-seeking. I believe I was very comfortable with or without attention. And to be fair, I think that disregard did indicate attention-seeking, but I don't think that was often my intention. And as I grew up and this narrative that I was drawn towards attention became more normal, I questioned whether or not that was accurate. It didn't feel true to who I am. I have plenty of shortcomings and unhealthy habits, but attention-seeking never felt like a big motivator for me. As people held on to that idea, I became more sensitive to what people could see as attention-seeking. With people misunderstanding my motivations, I started to build resentment towards anything that could be attention-seeking. I projected my own experience and started to villainize vanity. I rarely look at it from an outside perspective, paying attention to the good and bad. The reason I bring this up is because I've always looked at vain characters through a more critical lens, but that's what makes me love Himmel's character so much, the way it's challenged my own preconceptions, showcasing that heroism doesn't always come in the places you'd expect. When I started writing this video, I was concerned about how I would make it engaging. It feels like the heroes and stories are never the interesting parts, but that's the thing about heroes in Frieren. There's so many interesting parts. So what about the main hook of this video? A hero who can't pull a sword from stone. The inclusion of a sword, stone, and prophecy feels like exactly what I was talking about in embracing trope. But ultimately, I think what makes the writing good isn't so much what they included, but more the way they navigated it. A quick spoiler warning for season 1 of Frieren, but I won't be going over anything too crazy. The very first scene in Frieren is fulfilling the hero's journey, returning back home to a celebration after defeating the Demon King, ushering in an era of peace. This sets up a reveal later in the story really well. When Frieren's new party revisits the location of the hero's sword, where supposedly Himmel had pulled it from the stone and gone on to slay the Demon King, there's a reveal. It turns out he couldn't. It's a sword that he's carried a replica of on his hip his entire journey, which was gifted to him from a merchant after an act of heroism. He said, if I kill the Demon King with the replica, then what does it matter anyway? What's so wrong with a fake hero? There's this assumption when you're younger and growing up that adults have something figured out. And while experience is valuable and skills can give you tools to better handle life, I think that age often highlights just how little control we have. But people do have influence every day in decisions they make, big and small, to try to help. Sometimes we make mistakes, we're unaware of our actions, and we cause more harm than good. But striving to learn from your mistakes and take responsibility for them and then get better at helping, I think that's a really cool ambition. So seeing behind the curtain of the perfect hero, realizing he's very flawed is really fun. Himmel's character finds a way of being incredibly image-oriented and very authentic, all while focusing on the most important part of being a hero, trying to be helpful, a positive impact on people's lives, both big and small. And I think that's such a cool ambition that people can relate to and be inspired by directly. Stories have the opportunity to help us explore what we value and care about. And I think the archetype of a hero in stories is so reoccurring and saturated because it's so appealing. A lot of media is trying not to take itself too seriously nowadays, which I respect and I think is good in many cases. But to see stories take vulnerable leaps of faith, wear their heart on their sleeves, it's really endearing. Frieren did so many things that I'm tired of in such new and interesting ways. Like explore one of the best character archetypes in so many different ways, and doing it really well.